The pictures you see behind me are the ones I thought were going to go in the living room. They're the Sendias, but they're too small. So obviously they're going to come in here. I want to have a conversation this morning that I would love for you to participate in. I don't mean that you have to come on camera, but it's something is really happening that's quite profound. It's been showing up in the prophetics with great intensity. For people that have worked with me for a while, I can have the conversation because we've been steeping in some ideas about things that cross language barriers, description barriers, and make it a lot easier to for me to stretch what I've already talked about, what I've already said, into a larger context. But when I wrote down the description of the talk today, it was spot on. Whatever I wrote, which I can't remember now, it's about the mind of creation that all human beings carry. And I've had a difficult time writing the second book called Mind of Creation, but I knew, even though myself and others struggled with it, I knew that truthfully, writing a book is like any other creative medium. It's bringing something into existence that had not existed before in the manner within which it's being brought in. So when I started the creation exercises, good morning, everyone. So when I started the creation exercises, they had really come from some interesting places. When I could say they downloaded in my head, they came from talking to a physicist about quantum theory and entanglement theory and chaos theory and Einstein's theory of relativity. So if you look at it, they don't look associated. They don't. The creation exercises don't in any way look like I created them from the dialogue of the language that the people I engaged with in those physics type conversations. You would never guess that my brain got massaged enough, that my intellect got imploded enough, that a larger system of creation could come through. Why do I use the phrase larger system of creation? Because if you can access the larger systems of creation, they carry the smaller systems of creation. When the earth accessed her ecological consciousness, more could exist, more could come into existence, more could sustain itself long enough for an ecosystem to develop and to be established as relatively permanent. It could evolve, it could deconstruct and deconstruct and construct. Aspects of it could go out of existence and other things could come into existence. It could collapse and expand. But the system, the larger system, holds. Well, we have that mind. If you want to know what's behind me, it's the Sendias. I was hoping I could get them up behind me before this conversation started because I love them. And I thought I was going to put them in the living room, but they're quite small compared to the largeness of our living room. So they fit here perfectly. So this morning, I really want us to look at this, and I want you to engage. So if you have a computer you can write on, or if you have paper and pen or pencil, I really, really want you to engage in what I want to speak about this morning. What people talk about, the new mind, the quantum mind, the mindfulness, and that's really true. And it is intellectual, but it isn't intellectual in the sense of learned knowledge. It's intellectual because it thinks with the mental part of the mind, the word mind, the concept mind, the mind that goes beyond the sensory system, which is empathy and sentience, and literally thinks in words. When we can think in words, I'm so sorry, I didn't know I had a frog this morning, hold on. When we can think in words, the words begin to hold the experiences that we are in. But not only does it begin to hold the words, it begins to create systemic patterning, logical patterning, not rational, but logical patterning. And in creating that logical patterning, what I call the mind of creation begins to stir. And why the creation exercises are so important, not even the topic, but why they're so important is they are the blender that stirs the multi levels of consciousness in your mental mind, and you begin to become what we would call articulate and cognitive. And if you look at your experience of life, particularly in the last years, quite a few years actually, when we say we can't see the future or we don't know what to do, it is a problem of not seeing, because we've also been working in unity, not just us, but we're up against devolution and evolution. We're up against expand and collapse. We're up against, what I mean up against is we're leaning on it. We're up against construct and deconstruct. We're up against things coming into existence and things going out of existence. It goes to the old adage, you can't reinvent the wheel. So you can't keep reinventing the same systems that hold the reality that you're presently occurring in. You have to get to a larger system wherein the smaller systems can find coherence, cohesion, and congruence. So I'm just going to pause a minute, and whoever can think to write on the screen, you'll just have to write long enough that it pops up in front of me, that you understand me, that this has a cognitive, intellectual capacity, that you can, to some level, that makes sense to you. So I'm just going to wait a minute until you all pop your comments into the into the thread. Or if you have a question, you can pop the comments into the thread. Thank you. So, great. Thank you. So this is the exercise I want for us to do this morning. And we're going to play with it. We're not going to be educated. Do you understand? We're not going to be like we should know what we're doing. We're going to play with this. So I just want you to write down on a piece of paper basically what you can't think. Like, let's say Sarah, I kind of know what she's facing because she doesn't know what to do next. So you can simply write down, I don't know what to do next, or I don't know what to do for work, or I don't know how to fix my, I don't know how to get a new well. It's very basic. If you feel like it, which would be great, because of course the purpose of working on Friday together is to create a coherence, which happens when a group of people come together and they share together. We enter the meta mind. The meta mind that's why the Renaissance was so powerful. You know, the Renaissance occurred in sitting in cafes and coming for dinner, listening to music and talking afterwards. It wasn't like somebody popped up, presented the whole thing to the world, and then everybody said, okay, yes. That's why we have this dominating influence in the United States of America right now, because the human beings have listened to authority, not listening to the shared mind or the collective mind or the meta mind. So if you will write it down on the screen, that would be lovely. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, please write it down. I want it written down. We're going to do a body of work today. So while we're doing that, so for those of you that just came on, I want you to write down what you can't think. Now, a lot of you have high intuition. A lot of you have a track record of things, of manifestation. So I don't want you to fall into a certain rut that is fine normally of, yeah, I can't, even though I don't know what to do, I know it'll all work out. So that one, we're not interested in what you think will happen. I'm interested in what you think, what you can't think. So now, Britt, if you'll rewrite it, I can't think if I should get the vaccine. So Sylvia, you can write it. You don't have to write it here, but write it on your sheet. I can't think what to do for work next. And notice the thinking. Because when you say, I don't know, the knowing requires being able to think. Is that clear to people? We're in a fog. The mental mind is basically in a fog. And we're very fortunate because we've developed intuition, we've developed sentient intelligence, like trusting our gut is sentient intelligence. We've learned how to be responsive to clues, instinctive, but what is left out of the puzzle is the ability to think. Thank you. So just while you all are working this through, you are the analyst. You are the analyst of your thinking mind. Do you understand? So you could even say, my mind can't think. My mental mind can't configure certain thoughts. That's what we're after. That's what we're after today, like a kind of an objective thing, because we pin it on a thing called an I. But when I started doing the creation exercises a long time ago, I wasn't very understandable. I couldn't transmit what I was present to in a way that others could receive the information and not have it be a blur. And my medium obviously is talking, and in talking being able to get across what I'm present to so that others can be present to it also. So I don't want to limit it to me. It can also occur in what Britt said about, I can't think properly about the vaccine. My thinking can't seem to think it. Now, believe it or not, a lot's going to come out of this conversation today. Probably the thinking. Because it isn't, we look for synchronicity. We look for recognizing patterns in the universe that give us clues about the direction to move. That's instinctive. The problem is we can't think in concepts. So like, Britt, if you don't mind my using you, because that vaccine conversation is a perfect one, because we have all the information out there. We have everybody telling us what to think, but you don't have your own concept about taking a shot called a vaccine. Does everybody get that? I don't have a concept that lets me make a choice. I don't have a sufficient process of linear thinking, of minute by minute by minute thinking that lets me go through stages of thought that I can arrive at a decision. And it's not your fault. We've been going through this problem for quite a few years now, because the reality we're born into has been basically disintegrating. And we're now in a renaissance mode. And I'll tell you why, because it's showing up in the prophetics. So we don't want to try to cause anything today. We want to get clear about the issue. You understand? We just want to get clear about the issue. Now, the truth is, probably things we can't think will probably start to have a conceptual strength. You will probably be more cognitive out of this conversation. You'll probably have more ability to think about what you think about a vaccine, or think about what you think about work, because we're in a coherent field. We're in a meta mind, a shared mind. And it does stimulate cohesive thinking. It stimulates cohesive thinking. So when I've been in the prophetics, I'll say two examples because they were so startling. And one of them was a person named Carol. Would somebody just write down, Electra, would you just write down what we're doing to the best of your ability? So Laura can get in on the gig. So a woman named Carol, who a lot of us know, she edits a magazine that's published in a academic environment. When I came on the prophetic with her, I almost started crying, because I could see, and we're going to call it can somebody write down what I wrote as the description of today? Because I said it perfectly. Now I can't remember. But we are an aspect of creation. And while we have instincts and we can watch for patterns and we can trust synchronicity and we have sentient intelligence, we're stalled at our cognitive level. In other words, our brain is stalled. And when I was in this prophetic with Carol, my heart just leaped, because I wanted her to write what she thought, but I could also, that I could see prophetically that her medium of writing was geared to write about something that she would edit and publish, but that something was forming in her mental mind that was unique to her alone. It was unique to her. And why that points towards really being in the thick of a renaissance. Because when we're in the thick of a shifting paradigm, what the concepts, like a lot of you put down work, look at the concepts around work that you came from. Survival, we all know that one. Being useful, functional, that's another one. But if you look at it, those concepts aren't working. There must be another concept. There must be something that when you hit that concept, or you hit that cognitive thought, which means basically you can think it like that's it. That's a cognitive thought. If you can get to a cognitive thought regarding work, then it's like, that's it. So I had so much struggle in that prophetic, because I could see the difference between the two paradigms. And I'm going to say it simply, but I'm very clear it doesn't register yet. One was that we we use the creative thread to function and to provide services or contribution. That's like the high end, or survive. So this was very different what I was reading. And what I was reading means what I was trying to get out of my head regarding what was the future. This was simply the Renaissance mind. And the Renaissance mind is very clear. I probably was there. Because during the Renaissance, what human beings enjoyed was their mind. They enjoyed thinking newly. They enjoyed bringing thoughts together to create an idea about existence that hadn't existed before. They seemed to get messages from the universe, and they would talk and argue and have soirees, and they would work with their minds. They worked with their minds. And until I did this prophetic, several of them, but this is one of two, I didn't realize that I could see the creation thread of new thought, of new expression. But remember, I'm trying to say to you something I'm not sure I can get across. But it's freedom for human beings, for sure. It is the restorative process of returning to the original design of a human being, which is to be an expression of creation. So during the Renaissance time, it wasn't, in fact, several artists were incredibly poor in poetry, like this woman poetess was amazingly poor. But there was a Renaissance thread. There was an expression of creation moving through her so strongly, and through the other people so strongly, that they found ways to sit and gather. They found ways to think. They found ways to share what seemed to be like new concepts, new ideas, new relationships with things that no longer fit, like in the world we've been born into. Imagine the first doctor, this is a little making up, but it's also not making it up. But the first doctors, the doctors didn't figure out the bacteria on the instruments kill people. They did not figure it out that way. They began to think about washing the instruments, mostly with liquor, but they began to think about washing the instruments, and then they noticed after washing the instruments, less people died. That's how they got to the fact. That's how they got to the fact. But it started with a new thought that they applied called, let's just clean the instruments. And then, oh my God, look what happened when we cleaned the instruments. The second prophetic I did was with an actual artist. And I noticed, because it's one of the things my father said, if you ever want to be an architect, don't try not to go to architect school, if you can help it, because it makes you be functional. It makes you use the creative process to be a function, to be an application, basically to survive and belong to the society. So we've greatly diminished creative thinking. In our society, if you just look, I have to find the answer, not I have to get to the answer. And to find the answer is to try to look at everything everybody's saying out there, and to get to the answer requires thinking, new thought that creates new concepts that seem to point you in a direction that seems right to you. And then it's after you get into the direction that you go, oh my God, this is what was going on all the time. So with this artist, Leslie, I could see that she was in that compulsion. I call it a compulsion, call it the Renaissance compulsion. It's my new phrase out of the Prophetics, where she just really wanted to do art. And interestingly enough, my house partner is an artist, and she's looking for a room. She's looking for a room to do her art. And so if Leslie comes down, we already have an artist. We already have a place where artists can art to some extent. And so it begins to build a world. Do you understand? It begins the thought, and this is a simplistic way that you see it promoted, is that thought creates form or actualities. And that's actually the truth. But if you can't get to the composition of thought, it takes, like, it's like saying you can think a tree. No. For a tree to become a tree, it has to think seed, rain, ground, grow, sunshine. Do you follow me? It has to have a composition of thought that creates a concept. So we often talk about it as a context, but actually a context is already present. I'll go for the people that are talking about work. There's a new context for work called, I want work that fulfills me, that fulfills something, because in fulfilling something, I'm fulfilled. It's a pretty strong context for work. But the concepts that give us the kind of the box thinking, like, okay, well, and we're also up against the already existing concepts, the already existing norm. That's why for those of you that do creation exercises, template 3 and template 4 are so kind of critical right now. The point is, it started. It's moving through us. It's happening. Now, for all of you that joined, just read the comments. You should catch up with what we're doing. I just want you to practice a phrase called, I can't think this. I can't think work. I can't think whether I should take the vaccine or not. I can't think what to do next. I can't think. So I want to give you an example, because we are on the edge of something, and Tantra loves to be on the edge of things. I love to be at the tipping point. That is my juice. And over the years, I have enough chutzpah that I call it push on the wall till it gives. But this is actually more important than any other time in my waking history in this lifetime. Because if we can actually get a bunch of people, or a bunch of people can form different places. In fact, one of my clients is forming something called a learning collaborative, just leaving alone what to do next and just learn the system they're in. In this case, it's the health system. Just learn it and think about it and get related to it and see what thoughts begin to come up that can create a what we call reformation, a new form, which is also the Renaissance. So we're in this. I'm not bringing about a new application, and I'm always a bit ahead of the game. So I like to get in when people are in the pressure of something, because then if we apply a way to have the pressure move into a creative flow, then what we're trying to resolve happens much easier than lounging with lemonade and wondering if someday we might take on thinking about vaccines or work. So this pressure upon us is really pushing the envelope. And the point is, it's a very apt time to push the envelope too. But how? So I'm going to start with myself. So I said, because after a while, you actually say what you mean. You just may not think you're saying what you mean. But when you know you're saying what you mean, and you mean what you say, it's a whole different world. And people will sometimes, not much, very often, will say to me, do you really mean that? But I can't even imagine not saying what I mean. Do you understand? Or somebody will say, are you sure? I wouldn't even consider not being sure. Why would I open my mouth if I wasn't sure? So can you see that my thought process has achieved a certain capacity of certainty? And when I'm not certain, I say it. So I only say what I mean, and I only mean what I say. So I said in the 7-month project that a group of people did with me, that everything for me will be complete December 31st. All these 55 years of work will be complete. I knew that was real. I didn't know what it would look like. I had no idea. I had no, remember the rational mind. In the rational mind, you would have to have meaning for why you said that. You would have to have a logical explanation for why you said that. It wouldn't just be that you were clear about that. So December 31st shows up, and the Prophetics start, which bought me some time because there was nothing to do except do the Prophetics, which I'm in right now. But then I really did not know what to do. I only had my list of how I felt about things. I didn't really want to do the concept self-study. I'm trying to get to how to talk this. I had a concept called self-study, and I knew what was behind that concept. I knew the context of the concept. The context of the concept is that it is now time for people to take on their own consciousness. It is now time where I am, because I'm skilled in the mind. It's now, if people want to work with me, these are all my thinking projects, my thinking thoughts. If people wanted to work with me, I could see, I could think, I thought, I only want to work with people that will take on the study of their own mind, and in a Renaissance manner, an exploratory discovery manner, not to solve a problem, not to fix themselves, but to really, and I didn't realize it till I got into the Prophetics, because it all starts to sequence itself out. I didn't realize till I got into the Prophetics that I was in a different realm of existence than thinking. I was in a different realm of existence. Instead of being in a problem-solving realm, I was in the joy and freedom and beauty of an awakened mind. Can you see that? But I also knew we were embedded in trying to get somewhere, trying to fix something, and and thinking we were stupid. Human beings basically have because of the way the mental mind has been treated, we don't know its value. We don't have its art. We don't have its skill. And we really don't. We've been told what to think. The limitation, for most human beings, the extent of their intellectual intelligence is I agree with that or I agree with that. It really isn't, no, this is what I think. It really isn't, well, I can see that, but I also see this. That's a thinking mind. So my first thought was, okay, but I had no idea how to do that. I didn't know how to charge for it. I didn't know how to frame it. I knew it was something I wanted to do, but given I completed a 55 body of work, I wasn't really, I was driven then because I had a mission, and that mission got achieved. And people are ever interested in that, I'll be glad to tell you what got achieved. I leak it through periodically, but that was between me and God, or between me and creation, to be part of something that got humanity to this point of time successfully, where there could be enough people, a quantum amount of people, that simply could not occupy the territory of consciousness that humanity had been occupying. And I knew that they would begin to start to operate in the beginning of a new consciousness. And I knew the art form that I was skilled in is the mind. To understand, it's not painting, it's not prose, it's not poetry, it's the mind. So, and then I remembered when people used to ask me, well, what will you do if nobody asked to do consults anymore? And I said, I'd go fishing, because my identity was not attached to what I was doing. I loved doing the last 55 years of work I did. It is my self-expression. So then I said, oh my God, so remember, I'm thinking now. This is not like I'm assuming, I'm thinking all this. And then I thought, oh my goodness. So that's really interesting. Somehow I've always been able to move with my own self-expression, almost like an unknown like, it's unknown to me how I did that, except for I have a deep love of being part of the greater systems of creation. So maybe that had something to do with it. And then I confronted, wow, so all those things I've talked about, like not being people-centric, but really going, and then recently, oh, now I can really see people need to go inward. They need to get in and explore themselves. They need to become their own consciousness. And I, as a prophet or prophetess, I can see that. So all these thoughts are piling up on each other, but none of them gave me how to. None of them gave me the monetary way to do it. None of them fit right. And I know I'm saying the same to you all. If you listen, you're having thoughts, but they aren't becoming coherent. They aren't becoming cohesive. They aren't aligning right? Somebody respond to me. I know you're in this. It is the thoughts or the thoughts of a new thinking, but the thinking hasn't yet come coherent, cohesive, and congruent. Now, I probably wouldn't have gotten this far if I hadn't done over 20 years of the creation exercises, because I have the ability to stay present to what isn't available to me as well. That's correct, Michelle. It doesn't exist for us anymore. And we keep looking for something familiar. We're it. We have to get interested in our mind. Our mind, this thing upstairs, is the conduit of new realities. And it's functional realities. It isn't like I'm now part of a greater universe, I am one with creation. It has a practical application now. It's moving into the physicalness of our existence. That's what a Renaissance moment is. So then I was thinking all this, and then I was reading about curiosity on the LOC Institute, and I was reading about, and then I had this thought called, oh, this is really funny. So for those of you that just came on, you might want to read the thread, particularly look where Electra is, because we're doing a little piece of work here about what can't we think that keeps pressuring us, So, or you can go back and listen to the recording later. So then I noticed that in the LOC Institute, I mean, believe me, you really do move into duh when you suddenly get something that comes together in a cognitive way. Then I go, wow, well, the LOC Institute is an institute, duh. And that's Electra in Curiosities, but it's basically Electra's Institute that she has formed from the creation exercises with my beyond blessing and thank you. I went, well, it's an institute. Oh, for God's sake, where was I? If it's an institute and I'm interested in having people study, because I have not been taught. People think I've taught all these years. I've actually never taught. I have been building a field within which new realities can rise. So those of you that just finished the last 7 months, you may be having this kind of odd feeling that something's left undone. And that's because it's up to you from now on to use it, not me. Because we were in a project to restore God matrices that had gone out of existence, which mostly I know about. But it takes a collective meta mind that is literally the mind of creation, the mind of the one soul human, to have these larger systems come into place. So we can't be surface creatures anymore. We've got to think the bigger systems within which new realities can rise, and we basically need our noggin to do that. So that made sense. Can you see that made sense? Well, if I'm looking at people doing self-study, Electra is an institute, which is about study, and I actually now have to teach. And I know what I would teach has to do with this book called Mind to Creation that never got written. And no wonder it never got written. I just want you to hear my cognitive patterning. No wonder it never got written, because it's meant to be taught before it's written. And we said that. So all these remembrances start coming back. It starts to create a historic flow. And then I went, oh my God. So we talked about that. Electra and I did about language of creation, that it was just a little book that was a companion book to to the courses we were doing, it wasn't like it was a book complete in itself. It was connected to the first two templates that they teach in LOC. So that was the first part. And then I thought, oh my God, I've never taught. I've never taught. In other words, I've never given homework. I do, but it's always to build a field. But see, what's happened is the coherent field has been built. We are now in a quantum. That's what happened in the Renaissance. That's what's happened in the Renaissance. A quantum moment happened in human consciousness, and then the people that could milk it, could move into it, could work to think it, could work to bring themselves into right alignment with it, went to work. That's basically what happened. Some went crazy. Some died of starvation. But a huge amount of intellectual property, new concepts about reality, one of which was that the earth moves around the sun doesn't move around the earth, created a huge reformation of what a human being is and what society is. It was the beginning of moving outside the tribal systems, individual thought. And obviously we're now in the breaking down of tribal systems, and now we're in a renaissance of collective thought that creates a pattern of cohesion within which we can build systems that, in my world, operate on behalf of life and have us exist as whole, or whatever you all call it. Do you understand? You all call it. It's in your thinking patterns. It isn't random. So then I went, oh, that's funny. I don't even know how to teach. I know how to build a field. Just ask me. That's why Orengo loves me and Dominher. That's why quantum physicists love me, because they just give me a project and I go build the field within which it can occur. It's also how manifestation happens. I'm very good at building a field within which my house could occur. Or my dog could live 4 more years. I'm really good at that. But to actually train the mental mind to think in patterns, intellectual patterns that allow you to have your mental mind be the product of your sentient, intuitive, instinctive intelligence, just imagine what that might be like. If your mental mind was a product of your instinctive, sentient, intuitive, empathic, spiritual intelligence. Imagine. And that's what's upon us. So then I came up against what I'm in now, what I can't think. So what I can't think is I can't think money and I can't think time. I can't think how to do it. I can't think how to construct it. That is, so as far as I've gotten, is all I pay attention to. So I know, and so it's all happening again. So I'm now saying, after the Prophetics, Tantra Mat Inc., actually the Institute's under the corporation too, but the Field of Tantra, my website, instead of LOC being one of the pieces of the website, I have Tantra Mat will be one of the, like a guest. But none of this have we figured out. Alexa and I haven't even, we've talked this through a bit, but we don't know what we're doing at all. I just know I'm now a guest of the Institute because it thinks right. Do you understand? But what it means, I don't know. And how it goes into a structure, I have no idea. And in the midst of it, everybody has an assumption about what it means, and it triggers whatever people trigger. It triggers whatever people are triggered by, because it's new thinking. It's a new thinking that has a new kind of construct. The monetary thinking is a new thinking that has a new construct, and the how to do it in time and how to do it at all isn't thinkable yet, hasn't been thought yet. But don't trash the pieces of the thinking you are clear are coherent. You got to save those pieces. Does everybody, that's another, I need a little writing about, you understand that. That don't trash, like for instance, if we use vaccines, it's like, I don't feel right about getting a vaccine. Just go to there. That's as far as you need to go. Then you can say, wow, I wonder what that is. I wonder what I feel about that. Now, here's the magic. We couldn't do this before because we didn't have the quantum mind, which means a mind in unity with creation. That's what That's what a Renaissance era was. A larger system of coherence. The consciousness of humanity was tying in to the creative expression of creation itself. I promise. I promise. So I have found if we can only think, we must be able to think what we're thinking. So when you say, I don't know what to do for work yet, or I can't think what my next work is, that's simply a fact. Is it not? Is that not a fact? I can't think what to do for work yet. That is a fact. That is not a problem. We have it as a problem, but it's just a fact. And then you should be able to cross the bridge into, oh my God, I've got to be able to think what to do for work next. Isn't that accurate? I have to think, as Michelle said, I have to think in a reality that hasn't yet come into form. I have to think, I can tell a reality that has not yet come into form is trying to have me think it. Can you get that? I am so jazzed about self-study. No idea to create a concept about how to tell you what that is. And you all know I can frame things. Look what I did. I framed the spirals of being. For 7 years, you all played. I framed restoring the GOD matrices for seven months. So it's not like I don't know how to frame things to have certain things occur. This one's just bigger. So now imagine using work, at work and vaccine, we'll use those two for now, or creative expression. So imagine that if you could think, all I can think is I need to think until work becomes real for me, until what there is to think, to have what's drawing me to work. Because if something's drawing you to work, then you have to think until thinking can be fulfilled. And you stay with it. You just stay with it. Because there's now this creative flow starting in the bloodstream of humanity that doesn't want work to be survival-based. It wants it to be your unique and essential aspect of creation. It wants to be your part of the mirror, your part of your self-expression, your part of reality. That's a reality that's rising, maybe multiple realities that are rising on behalf of all life. That's where we're at. That's where we're at. And so my interest in having a self-study course in the LOC Institute isn't because I want to further you. It's because I want a place where my skill set, where my art, which is the mind, the human mind, where my art has a place to express. And honest to God, there is no price for that. That's our challenge. Self-expression was made to have a price, and it made money the value, and it shouldn't be the value. It should be that human beings love to come together to think, that they love to come together to art. Yes, it's fun. It's the creative expression of creation. And then we gather like they did in the Renaissance time. These are the bits and pieces I have, like for soirees, where we all think and we all gather knowledge and it's so unknown to the modern man. Everything about our modern world has been to be functional, to apply ourselves, to contribute. The spiritual thing is to self-sacrifice for the whole. Jesus is winning, by the way. He said no more self-sacrifice, only self-expression. So here we are, we're stuck. We're stuck in a wonderful, wonderful place. So I wanted to unpack this for you because I really was in my own quandrum until I started doing the prophetics. And when I started doing the prophetics, I went, oh my God, I can feel that expressive thread of creation now moving through human consciousness. I can feel that. I'll have to post as soon as I find the music. There's this great song. It's like one of the new, what do you call it? Techno song, techno dance songs. But it has the word express yourself. And yet, That's the quandary we're in. We need the mental mind to be able to think how we want to express ourselves, and how humanity has been the only level of consciousness we're in up until now is we had to be functional. We had to, in the highest end, we thought we had to give our lives for something, and I was definitely one of those, and contribute to the world. That's very different than I just want to do it. I just want to do it. This is what I want to do. And I don't know how. And I don't know how. And because it's an in-between world, and because we're in between a world that's collapsing and a world that's forming, guess what? We don't know how to do it. But we can stand and push the envelope. We can think. If we collectively decide to think, and to all think, and not be embarrassed, or we have this like shame for not thinking when we haven't even been trained to think. You know, we have like, if we can't think it, we're stupid. No, your mental mind has a very poor conceptual capacity. And even those of us like myself, who has a fairly strong conceptual and conceptual and contextual capacity, I can't think it. And there must be an it to think. Capiche? There must be an it to think. And I'm just going to add a small piece about time, because in all the years, I'm so excited. I'm stumbling through the prophetics. And thank God they're a transmission, because I'm so clear in my mind, in my register of consciousness, I'm so clear we've passed the barrier to the next reality, and that we don't have a problem. We just have an issue. And the issue is we can't yet think what there is to think. However, if we work to try to think what there is to think, which is basically, I want to be self-expressed. Isn't that true? Wherever I am, whether it's work, whether it's getting a shot, whether it's putting on a mask, whether it's going to the doctor to find out I have terminal cancer, I want to be self-expressed. It has come home. It is rooting. I am reading it in the prophetics. And when a human being says, I want to be self-expressed, we are part of creation again. We have been restored to the fabric of creation again. We have. And the outer world is no longer giving us what we need. And our inner world will. Our inner world will. And how we close the timeline, how we close the gap of time, is that we find ways to do it together. That's all I know. Because I practiced this. I took 7 years for people to do a body of work called Spirals of Being, to prove that things come into a sense of self gets stronger in a collective coherence than it does individually. I did 7 months because I needed to do a body of work, which was successful. And for creation, I work for creation, remember? But now I can't even, see, I can't, when and if I do this, because I don't even know if I'm even going to do it. When and if I do this thing called Let's Study the Mind, it has to be exciting for everybody. I probably couldn't tolerate one person that was in there pathetically. So I must be in a different register of exchange. I'm talking to a couple of people specifically. If they register what I'm saying, I must be in a different register of exchange. It's because I'm not against people suffering and having trouble. But I know that if people can think in larger systems, it affects all the people that think in limited systems. That's what the Renaissance was. That's what the Renaissance was. It was a body of people that began to think outside the box, that began to have new thinking, and it affected every one of us. Every one of us. We have a world that, yes, we still have the collapse of the warring tribe issue going on, but even in the midst of that, even in that, it's rising. So I'm looking for the minds minding the mind of creation. Because if look, I live where only people close to me that interact with me really realize that we've penetrated the veil and that things are actualizing beyond the norm. But it takes a collective now. Welcome, Gisela. It takes a collective. And so I can tell there are two, remember concepts? I can tell there are two concepts that I'm stalled at. Two qualifiers, we could almost call them. One is I can tell that I cannot work unless people are really excited about working and studying and getting to their own mind. This is not to say people, it's the art of it. Do you understand? It's not the condemning or the judging. It's just my art form, my next art form of the mind, my self-expression, which includes others, is the art of the collective, and as a self-expressed entity that is generating new molecules of expression that will formulate out there like bubbles or molecules into new things. So I can tell excitement needs to be part of the qualifier. Excitement about the discovery of the self of the mind of creation. I can tell that the other qualifier is that money has to fit right. And I can't even figure that at all. And I've never really thought about how I wanted to work, because I can generate a field within which new ways of existing can rise. But I've never been where I gave homework and people loved going home to do their own self-study with their own mind. I've never been in that. It's like I want to go back to the Renaissance days where I probably would say, like, what a mini. I would say, oh my God, let's gather on Friday. Let's really get into this. And some would be scientists, some would new science, some would be poets, some would be writers, some would be painters. But we were out for the consciousness of the new mind, how our minds could work, how our minds could awaken, the awakening mind. And then, I've got to add this one because it makes me laugh. I'd like to write down the tagline of the Institute because it really made me laugh. It says, sculpting the mental mind for consciousness. Is that it? And so I read it and I go, duh. Of course I'm going to come be a guest at this Institute. I can only be a guest now because I don't know what I don't know what I want to do yet, but I want that platform to do it in because they're already at work. They're already in the creative expression. She built 7 template books with me that are just kick butt awesome, that human beings can just go purchase on their own to self-study. I mean, can you see that much is done? But how you do the other parts, well, of course that's the issue we're in. Of course that's the issue we're in. How do we get money? How do we have something provide for monetary survival? How do we, in my case, charge? Do I charge? Because we're in a system collapse. So everything that was part of that system, do you register this? Everything that was part of the old system we can't use anymore, and we can't yet think, because we're the thinker of it, how we want to do the new system. How do we want to do money? How do we want to do gathering together? How do we want to do fun? How often do we want to meet? These are real practical questions. However, it's exciting because we can't do it the old way. We are the new pioneers. And the father of neuroplasty, the father, what they call him, I can't remember his name because it's a complicated European name or even maybe Asian name. But the man that's credited with being the father of neuroscience, says that the mind is the next frontier. And I concur. I concur. So the last thing I want to say, just to stimulate this in each one of you in your own fashion, because all we can really do is share our own territory, share what we're at work about. And I've never wanted to give people a dogma. I've only ever wanted them to be their own selves. That's my joy. And when people begin to become themselves, you have no idea how kick-butt happy I am. And the confrontation of being a self is the self wants to express itself. It wants to self-express. It doesn't want to just show up at the factory. It doesn't want to be in the mundane anymore. It just doesn't. So I forgot the thing I wanted to say, but let me see if I can remember it, because I want to complete with that. Somebody give me the time. Oh, I know what it is. So I want to make you a promise. And the promise is, if we tackle just stating the facts, I can't think this, I can't think money, I can't think survival, I can't think what to do next. Thank you. I thought I got over an hour. Then creation will respond, because it's the creative process to tell the truth. It's a creative process to only think what you can think and to state what you can't think. You don't want to get on a gerbil wheel running around and around. You want to stop at the stop sign and wait for the truck to come by. Okay? And there's so much more to go. But I appreciate today, I love working it out in public. I always have. And because we're in the new age, and these prophetics, I'm almost ready to do another Facebook Live next week, because I think it's great to be involved in the prophetics, because it's really the prophetics and the people doing the prophetics. They're basically the mind of what's coming. I'm reading what's coming. I'm reading what's coming for all of us. So they're very potent. They're very important. And they give us access to what we should be paying attention to. Self-expression. And how to figure out how to be self-expressed in a world that has used us for functional fodder. A world that has used us for functional fodder, we have now said no more. So, Britt, you got to figure out to you've got to talk to the vaccine. You've got to talk to work. You've got to talk to these concepts, these thought planes, like they're real energy fields. You got to talk to them. That's all I'll leave you with tonight. I love you. Or this morning, where I am. Take precious care.